We are live. How's it going today?
Not bad. Got up to 70K yesterday in Wargate.
Dude, you're crushing it.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that.
When do you think you'll be done?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just going to keep throwing at it, you know. This Thursday, we're supposed to, Tom and I and MJ are going to do a show. We're going to design like the last 10K of it, you know, with it's not going to be like a word budget. We're just going to like basically brainstorm and figure out how, like, what the finale is, you know?
Interesting. Where do you think it's going to go?
Oh, I have a pretty good idea. It's just a question of like what ornaments the journey, you know? Basically, they're Empress Demra. She's been on her way to the Pyramid Zone. That one chapter I read for you and Chris, I forget how long ago it was already, but that was in the
2 weeks.
Yeah, that was in the pyramid. Like that's where everybody in the story is going to end up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a pyramid that's floating inverted, like point down, like capstone to capstone above the pyramid, and that's a spaceship. So they got to go in there to like solve whatever needs to be solved for the end of the book. But I have no idea. I have no idea what's in that pyramid spaceship. So we're going to figure it out, you know?
Interesting. I assume you have some ideas for what's inside of there, or at least what you'd like the characters to do.
Yeah, some ideas. It's just, it's also like open-ended, like what happens to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's going to be Sir Warren and Princess Tyrina that go in with the Lyshimi, the Golden Woman. Does Lyshimi live? Does she die? I'm trying to determine all kinds of different consequences and stuff too. So I have an idea, but oh wow, I'm supposed to. It says Ricky. Is that me?
Yeah, isn't it?
Oh, cool. Yeah, all right. Well, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, no, that's fine by me. I'm always ready. So, you're the boss, though. You say when.
No. That's a recording. Actually, that's the last session.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's available to listen to your read if you want to. It's up on my podcast channels, so like Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts and wherever else. Marnie, if you're hanging out and you want to chat, talk about your work, or kick around ideas, or just BS about writing, you know, request a mic. We'll bring you up. More than happy to talk.
Yeah, in the meantime, I don't know Marnie, but it says I'm following them, so I must have seen them before.
Yeah, see, it's a small, tight community. The writers on Twitter, but additionally also the writing spaces on Twitter. We all kind of hang out together, I would say. So up above, just for some housekeeping here, there's a handful of posts. The one we were just talking about is the farthest to the left. As you may or may not know, I record these sessions and then release them as podcasts so that people can check them out on a bunch of different platforms. I don't like to keep it siloed here on Twitter, and, you know, want people to check it out. So get additional, distribution in that way. Also, there are a couple of links to some videos that I have been writing the script for and then performing the voiceover of. I'm working on those with Chrissy. She goes by Pressman C on Twitter here. I assume, actually, I know that her account is linked off of those tweets. And if you haven't checked those videos out, it's kind of, an exploration of not only the story of the Pied Piper, but also a look at the divergent stories of the Pied Piper, because there are many, speculative routes that people think may have occurred. So we do a little bit of an investigative documentary over the course of what will be 3 short videos. 2 of them are out right now. The last one is going to come out tomorrow. morning, and then been kind of wrapping that up, and then we have one more video that will be just the story, the traditional telling of the story. It's a little bit of a combination of the Robert Browning version and the Brothers Grimm version, so I've kind of taken both pieces of editorial and massage them together. So it'll have a little bit of traditional storytelling and then a little bit of the rhyme scheme material that Robert Browning has. And she has put together a slew of video clips using Runway Gen 3. A lot of them look really, really great. Obviously, sometimes, you kind of have to work through what you have and try and make the best out of it. It's very difficult to get everything that you want in every single shot just off of text to video right now. Again, that is a skill, and it does include writing. So you have to understand how to prompt those engines to be able to get out what you want. And she is quite good at it, much better than I am in that regard. And then all the way to the right is the session Chris holds on Thursday for kind of Film 3 AI film group, us in general, as we make videos. We also do interviews over there, so we'll have another interview session next week. But yeah, we'll be talking about fairy tales as we've been kind of releasing a bunch of different, not only ours, but also videos from other folks on the crew as well. Julianne, if you want to come up, you're more than welcome to. I'm just kind of giving a little bit of context for the tweets that are pinned up top in the nest. So if you're having a look at those, they don't seem like foreign information in general. And also, before you got here, we were talking with Ricky about his novel that he's working on. I think you said it's going to be 100,000 words.
Yeah, 100K first draft. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, obviously, we all write a lot, I would say. I do a lot of different writing. Let's say, for example, these videos, there's only, I think, about, let's say, 800 to 900 words in these in total across the 3 videos. So it's not extensive, but at the same time, trying to get it to fall within the time frames that the run times, let's phrase it that way, that we wanted for these videos to be able to natively post them here on Twitter. That's not necessarily a challenge, but it is something that you have to be cognizant of as you are crafting that script. And then also the performance side of things, because, you can do different things with a script vocally, but at the same time, if you want to make it fall within the runtime, and then also to orient it with the video clips that we've generated, a lot of which, again, are Chrissy's, but also a lot of them are based off of images across the centuries that relate to the Pied Piper. So there's a lot of public domain images, by artists and illustrators and engravers over the centuries, really, and kind of dug through all that material. And that also helped to guide what pieces of the narrative we wanted to put in there for these parts, but then also just in general, what aspects of the story that we gravitated towards, in both the investigative docu-mystery sense as well as the full AI text to video generated version of the story that we'll release probably early next week is kind of the date we're shooting for. We have most of the clips, and I've done a rough reading of the script. I'm going to go back through and kind of clean some of that up. I think there's a couple of lines we can kind of strip out, but then also the performance I want to be engaging and fun. Not unlike how Ricky's reading was 2 weeks ago. That's up above too.
Oh, thank you.
Also, you know what I ought to do is I ought to toss up. Sorry if there's a little bit of background noise as I'm moving my phone here, but I should probably toss up the session from Tuesday that we did as well with Heidi, because those are great conversations. and we're trying to flesh out topical themes over the course of, every week, but month to month, and relay that through our progress with our work. And I think that's a really important part of being, not only a writer, but productive, is like getting, I don't think you necessarily need like totally strict deadlines if you're independent, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you do get your work out there and that people are able to see it or hear it and read it and enjoy it. Otherwise you could just write for yourself and keep it on your computer. But if you're trying to make it available for folks, I think with the workshop sessions that we're doing each month, it's helping to kind of keep us honest about progress or, how long something takes to get done. So right now I'm wrapping up a short story. I did the majority of the layout for that yesterday. So it's the Fall of Tartaria video that I did months ago, but turned into a short story. So it's about 2,000 words. There's a slew of images that were basically the init images, the initial images I used to create motion for that video, but kind of placing them in line with the story and, offering a little bit of visual context to the editorial. I like doing that. I've been doing it with my short stories. As Relic of the Aztecs had a few images in it. This one has a lot more. I don't know exactly how many. I think over a dozen are placed in line in the text. And then it's something that I want to do, here and there over the course of doing fiction, because I'm writing short stories, right? So in that way, it adds a little bit to the experience and also connects a line between the fact that I wrote this story, but it started out as a video and I had all these images first. I don't know if that's something that you do at all, Ricky. Like, do you obviously we do cover design, but not necessarily images or illustrations. What do you have in your stuff? Anything like that?
I don't have any real talent. I sometimes draw AutoCAD maps that are what I call fantasy cartography, but they're just line work. A friend of mine has that program that can make it look like a real like fantasy map, but I don't use that. And otherwise, I don't have any graphical talent, like as far as drawing and I don't. My brother-in-law and I were playing around with AI as far as using prompts, like a really, really fast AI. He was spending decent amount of bread on the service, and we were making like monsters.
Very cool.
Yeah, I have a lot of chimera in my fantasy, like different melding of different organisms, and I find that AI prompts can get there, especially if it's a decent service. They can get there pretty quick.
Absolutely.
I have this creature called a swander, which is like a swan spider, and it's a lethal thing, egg laying creature, and he was able to conjure that up like really quick.
What were you using? Do you know?
I'm sorry, Michael. I know that's terrible, but I don't remember the name of the program. I would have to ask him.
Midjourney, maybe?
Vaguely. I don't know for sure, but it was very effective. It was cool. Like, in other words, if I use that and I tooled around with it, I could probably come up with illustrations for a book pretty quickly,
You might try Ideogram. So they'll give you free credits daily to imagine things. I find that to be really helpful. It not only helped me bring together the Fall of Tartaria, video, and kind of give me a basis of components to work with in terms of getting fleshing out a story, which materialized out of the ether. Maybe they all do, but at the same time, that one specifically, because I and like I say all the time, I'm fairly new to fiction, so it's still something that I'm discovering in myself, but that helped a lot. And I really like the process of, creating these images, trying to think of what story could be told based on those, putting them into motion, putting that stuff into a timeline, a video editor, and seeing what's there, and then getting feedback from our group, the film crew that we run with, and seeing, what they thought or where it could go, and then creating additional images to kind of bulk out the story and move things along and give it an arc in that way to, give it some rising action and a climax, because at the beginning I was just going to do a narration over these images. But then as soon as I was able to characterize the narrative and kind of bring it down to earth as opposed to a bird's eye view of the story I was telling, then I was able to really write dialogue and bring those characters to life, and also to give them a voice. So Runway, gosh, what was that? Late March. I think I released that video April 1st. So late March, they opened up lip sync on their service, and being able to put a voice into these characters and be able to give them dialogue scenes against each other in video just, elevated the process in specifically for that. And, in turn has made it a viable short story, in my opinion, as I've been turning it into editorial over the last, couple of months, and now getting it prepared. So like I said, I did most of the layout yesterday with the images and the editorial and stuff like that, a little bit of graphic work that needed to be done. And then, I'll be loading that up to ACX fairly soon. I would guess in the next week. I need to do an audiobook reading for it as well. So I'll use that as kind of the last proofreading of the editorial and do that recording, probably, do that editing through August, and then release the audiobook version as well in September, I would guess. But the ebook will be out next month. I'm pretty confident that that'll happen that way. They don't take that long to approve. So if you are trying to get something out with Amazon, Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, it really only takes like 7 to 10 days. And a lot of times it's 48 to 72 hours for approval. They are pretty good about it. ACX takes a little bit longer for audiobooks. Usually, I would say it's like 10 to 14 days. Sometimes it'll be a little bit faster, but that's kind of what they tell you to expect in general. I don't know if you haven't done any audiobooks, have you?
My nephew made one for me, but it's really cool. But he used the software where it sounds like a GPS. But the voices were pretty good. I mean, he diversified them. He's busy with stuff, but he's eventually going to put it up somewhere. I was just talking with him about it. It was a novella, like 33K or whatever, and I wrote it a number of years ago, but it's a lovely cyberpunk book, very violent and dystopian, and it turned out great. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but otherwise, no, I haven't.
Well, that's all right. Yeah, it'll be there and will be available when it is. That's kind of how it goes, I guess. For me, I'm trying to use fiction and short stories as a way to increase, or let me rephrase, to decrease the amount of time between releases. So basically, like every year since 2019, I've put out a paperback. And, again, a lot of them are heavily pictorial or graphic. My own photography or photographs, historical photographs and things like that I've kind of doctored up to make presentable. Not that they were bad. They weren't. Charles Arnold photographed the Columbian Exposition excellently. And I have a great copy of those images that, I was able to work with, not only in terms of kind of cleaning them up and adding some contrast and bringing out the clarity of the images, but also then pushing them through AI to automatically add color to them, which I think for me, as somebody who's looked at these images hundreds of times in some cases, as soon as you add a little bit of color to them, it really creates additional depth within them. And in a few cases, I have seen things inside of the image that I wasn't previously aware of. So, it's not only, the tools are not only about kind of imagining things, but also to some degree improving things in that way. I know there are a lot of colored versions of these images out there, but I wanted to use the technology. That's kind of what the project is about too, is using technology to keep the legacy of the event alive. But yeah, I would say, you might play around with ideogram to, it's free. So, it won't cost you any money to explore and discover your favored prompting technique inside of that. And you might find that you bring it over to other systems and you get vastly different things or better things or just things that you like more. I do that occasionally. So there's one baseline prompt that I use for everything for the first time that I run it, and just to see what it spits out without it. And it's a very, very simple prompt just to see what it gives me. And I kind of use that as, again, baseline kind of sense of what it's capable of or what it's geared towards. Some things I like, some things I don't. And that's advanced considerably over the last couple of years as the technology has improved. For the folks that are hanging out, you're more than welcome to come up and talk. This is a very open conversation. So if there are questions that you have or things you want to promote or just want to talk shop with us, request a mic, we'll bring you up and we can talk. This is an open dialogue that we do every 2 weeks. If you haven't been here before, or if you have, feel free. Just taking a sip of water. It's important to hydrate. I feel like I'm kind of a water freak. I like distilled water. And so I distill water. I don't know what kind of water you guys all drink. Ricky, what do you drink? What are you drinking?
Yeah, so I'm a big person. Like I'm in the middle of a weight loss journey, I guess they call it. I used to drink all kinds of sugary drinks and aspartame and all this other stuff, and I feel like I was addicted to those things. What I do now is I make herbal tea. I bought a special kettle, and I boil a six bag combination. So I use like 2 different flavors, and I make very, very nice blends out of like Celestial Seasonings or Bigelow's or whatever. And there's no sweetener, and the flavor is intense enough. Like no sugar, no aspartame, not even stevia. The flavor is concentrated enough where I make a nice, enjoyable beverage, and it's ostensibly it's water. And that's what I drink mostly. I mean, I'll have a glass of water and here and there, but I'm trying not to hit the high caloric drinks,
Yeah.
So, and I agree with the importance of hydration, certainly.
Used to be really big on tea in the past. Go through phases with it. Every day I drink coffee. I do love it. I don't know if you have a process or if you're making tea or making drinks and they're part of a ritual, but on Sundays I will write or work on, things for the coming week, kind of in rotation. And I'll often go to a cafe, and I find that like that all kind of becomes a little bit of a ritual about getting into the mindset of writing or just having an expectation of environment. I am currently in the middle of On Writing by Stephen King. I'm listening to his audiobook version, which is read by the author. Always enjoy that. But he's kind of gone through a little bit of biography and memoir, but now is kind of getting into the craft specifically. And he's kind of talking about environment. And I find that to be important, as well as tooling, like what you are comfortable working with. If you are a physical writer, or if you are a keyboard writer, or maybe you even use a typewriter, who knows? Or maybe you just dictate. Maybe you do all voice to text. I think like whatever it is, or however you like to do it, you kind of want to prepare yourself to enter that mind state. I don't know if that's how you do it. I know like you're prolific compared to me as a writer. You write in a day, you know, what oftentimes are the entirety of a short story for me.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole section in my book of writing about writing. I have a whole section about environment. As far as drinks, I mean, I used to be into coffee, but I have a heart condition, and coffee it really does not, like, I can't do it anymore. I loved it, like I love iced coffee. But it's over now. So I just do, I mean, if I want a coffee flavor, I can get like a chicory root tea or whatever. But I agree with the ritualization in a big way. I actually have a spiritual practice to my writing personally. Not everyone is theist or even spiritual, but it's like you don't have to be that way. You can be materialistic or materialist and still have a ritualization. Because it's just a habit. Ritual's a 50 caliber word for a habit, right? So it's like whatever it is you do, you're trying to center yourself. It's important to center yourself when you're entering a creative mode. It's like Carl Jung wrote about what he called the meditation space when it came to his shadow work, and I find that extremely useful. You have to isolate. And if not isolate, you have to be in a public space that is, you know, you have a little section of that public space. And a nice beverage helps. Whatever it is that helps you center yourself and level your mind, cycle your brain chemistry so that you can enter creative mode. It's very important. Basically, you have to get all your adaptive stuff out of the way. You can't have like a dog that needs to be fed or clothes that need to be washed. Like you got to get all that stuff out of your way so there's nothing nagging at the back of your mind, because that kind of cancels creativity. When you're anxious, when you're preoccupied, like you can't focus and then unfocus. You know,
I would agree with that. I'm again like for me. I have those Sundays, and I do it in public, I suppose, to a degree. But it's not as if like I'm putting it on display. It's just that I am in public. Part of that is the people watching aspect. Part of it is the scheduling, and also knowing that, you know, I'm only going to be in that environment with that time carved out for so long, and I want to be effective while I am. Obviously, sometimes the muse strikes, and I think you got to run with that. Like I did a couple of weeks ago, just all of a sudden had a flood of ideas. And for the short story I'm working on for release in the spring, just out of nowhere ended up writing, 600 words while I was out in the world and over the course of a couple of hours. But it was really effective and unpredictable. I, had no idea that was going to happen, but all of a sudden just a couple of ideas kind of crept up on me and I wanted to get them down. And then I was realizing, well, there's nothing stopping me from going further with this or fleshing it out more. They don't just have to be ideas to revisit later when I have time. I had time, and it was really good. It felt great to just be able to take advantage of that sneaking up on us. Hey, for the folks hanging out, if you are interested, grab a mic. We'll bring you up. If you have things to promote, feel free. If you want to chime in about whatever we're talking about, you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a horizontal line that you have to kind of like find and explore as far as a comfort zone between consciousness and unconsciousness. Like the muse you're talking about striking like that, you found that comfort zone, so you made contact with your unconsciousness. It's the same place that dreams, daydreams, glimmerings, all that stuff comes from the same place. It's unconsciousness, the collective unconscious of archetypes. So every once in a while, there's going to be a flash of lightning down there, and if you happen to be looking, it's like there's a thunderstorm going on all the time down there. But a lot of times you could be sitting watching a thunderstorm and you don't see the lightning because you just happen to not be focused. Well, that's why I call them muse flashes, because if you are focused, if you get out of your own way, and that's not always so easy today. I don't want to make it seem like it is. We're all very busy. We're all very, very preoccupied trying to survive and make money. It's not so easy with the economy the way it is. But it's like if you are in a position to see one of those flashes, that's the highest coin in the realm. That's the most beautiful thing that's going to happen to you in that moment. So the goal is to like make that happen, Not so easy all the time. I have the advantage that I'm a creative obsessor. So I'm trying to write at literally every chance I get. If there's any, I come on Michael's show because he runs good shows, and I like to stick close to the writing community. I could be writing now, but when I saw his program come up, I'm like, well, let's check in. Let's see what's going on, because it's always quality time explaining these things. But just remember that about your inspiration. It's like a thunderstorm that never ends. You happen to be like in conversations or doing things, so you miss all the show, and not so easy to focus all the time.
Have you ever watched or listened to, there's a video on YouTube of David Lynch talking about creativity through the lens or perhaps the filter of transcendentalism?
Yes, I'm familiar with David Lynch. I love his work. And I have watched that video. He's not kidding. He's one of the purest of artists. Like, if you ever see him do what he does, it's really hard to deny him. I mean, the results are mixed, but the raw activity cannot be denied. And the movie Eraserhead is probably the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched that movie, but it's like a nightmare on film. I have night terrors and stuff, and sometimes I have nightmares and bad dreams, almost to the point of where it's like an incubus or whatever. But this guy actually can make it happen for everyone to see. So he has some kind of raw nerve connection to unconsciousness, and he attributes it to TM, as have many other prolific and fabulous artists throughout the 20th century. But yeah, no, he's an undeniable force,
I would highly recommend watching that video. I also there's another really long edit. Maybe it's like an hour. It's just the sound of rain with clips from some interview of him with him just smoking cigarettes and talking about art and creativity. It's also on YouTube, but I'll play that every once in a while. But I love his ideas that he does in the first one we were talking about, where he kind of draws these diagrams and just talks about the unconscious or the wellspring of viable ideas to draw from. And that, like, if you are willing to put yourself in contact with that space, you'll never run out of ideas. For him, as a filmmaker, and to go back to Eraserhead for a second too, yeah, I agree with you. I only watched that one for the first time in the last year. I don't remember exactly when. It may very well have been at the beginning of this year. Incredible first feature-length release from a director creative. I mean, it's black and white, and it was created over the course of 5 years, I think. Obviously that's just a tremendous dedication, but also an incredible just work of a film. And even if you don't necessarily like it, and again, it does have a lot of darkness in it, and it does kind of get into, I would say, some kind of shrouded autobiographical type of content, that he was maybe exercising on film through the 70s at that time. But you cannot deny his capacity to create or to find ideas or to exhibit ideas on screen. His later work, once he starts getting bigger budgets and is really truly dedicated to time frames, obviously also excellent. I find him to be in that caliber with Kubrick in general, and specifically. There are, a handful of filmmakers that just, to me, are able to put out great work very consistently. And I would say he's in that crew of folks. I even like Dune. I like his version of Dune. I think it looks and feels really comfortable, as a piece of kind of early mid 80s practical effects filmmaking, science fiction material. I am fine with the divergences in story that he did at that point in time. I'm mostly fine with the stuff that Denis Villeneuve has done as well. What was the guy who had originally started to work on producing the film in the 70s? I can't remember. I watched a documentary on it.
Yeah, you're talking about Jodorowsky.
Yeah, Jodorowsky. Yeah,
he's the one that got the ball rolling, and
for sure.
Yeah, amazing.
I am not sure that his film would have been enjoyable, or that it really would have even been Dune in a recognizable sense. But again, like, his contribution to not only getting that film made at some point, but also the aesthetics of filmmaking as a craft, and documenting the thought processes of how to create in a group of people, because he brought together such an incredible collection of creatives to brainstorm about how to make that work. Even though it didn't, those people went on to do, great work. I think a handful of them ended up working on Aliens together a few years later.
Yeah, he worked with Mobius. He was the one that made the initial contact with Geiger. And Ridley Scott, I don't know, would have ever even known about Geiger, even though I think Necronomicon was out. It was through the production of Jodorowsky's, which, as we know, was a lot of hot air. It never ended up happening. But they had so much resource material that it just spilled over. So it just goes to show, like, sometimes that salon mindset of, like, just let them run free. It's like the ultimate blast crater of creativity that came out of that project that rippled for decades,
Absolutely.
And watching Lynch and listening to White Noise over Lynch, it's logical if you want to be inspired. I have a chapter in my book. It's called Anti-Writer's Block Technology, because I believe that writer's block is just a state of being uninspired. So watching documentaries about authors or about musicians or any filmmakers, anything, it really gets the collective juices flowing as far as creativity is concerned. When you're sitting there a little disoriented and not really knowing what to do, it's like it can really give you a nice kick in the ass and get you going down the road,
Yeah, I would say that, to bring this back into the realm of writing, no matter what you're writing, I would say keep all of that stuff. Don't scrap it. Even if they're just little kernels of ideas and things, you never know how you will end up putting them to work or what it could develop into over time if you kind of keep picking away at it or adding to it little bits at a time. Again, throughout the week, I'm always writing. I'm even if it's just 20 to 50 words a day, I'm writing something. Whether or not that's like journalistic stuff or creative stuff or video work or client work or anything like that, it's always materializing. And I try to keep all that stuff in notes or in notebooks. That way, if I don't want to have to think it again, so documenting it and being able to pull it up and make it live, or, breathe a little additional life into it just to keep it somewhat fresh, or even making sure it doesn't die on the vine. That's helpful for me. I don't try to give myself a word count limit. Maybe it's something I should do in the future. I think if I wanted to get to a novel length of a piece, that would be helpful just in general, because you want to do it in some kind of timely manner. I don't necessarily think it's great if a book is taking a decade to write. I think it, maybe it's not for you, or you're not compelled by the story or the craft of it. But at the same time, hey, maybe it does take that long to work on it. I don't know. I can't imagine being saying that I'm passionate about something and then it also taking just an extravagant amount of time. That doesn't seem to jive with those two notions. But hey, there are, again, film projects that have sat in development for many years and then come out and we love them.
Yeah. The general thing about word budget and about word yields. Word yield is how many words a day, which is like a goal that you've established for yourself. Stephen King says, it's like 500 to 1,000 words a day, and you could write anything. He says that on stage. Like, I've watched him and George Martin on a stage together, and they talk shop, and they clearly have very different processes, but they also have different stylizations, different voices. But once you've attained voice fulfillment, which is like, I can write almost anything at any point, but I have preferences. I have things that it's a range. It's like a vocal range. That's why they, like, you sing alto, you sing tenor, you sing bass. Those are almost like genres or like types, stylizations of writing. And some people are virtuoso. They can do almost anything. But the word budget, what it does is it eliminates the chaos of page placement, which is, what am I going to write? How am I going to write it? Where is it going to go? That stuff is like, there's a lot of that stuff is, it's an impediment, and if you do the type of outlining I do, you can walk away from it for weeks, months, years, and then eventually you'll come back. You may not write the same thing, but it's anchored. So when you return to that outline, you're like, oh, okay, Act 1 is this, Act 2 is this. I can see where this is going for Act 3. And it removes a lot of questions that I think hold people back, because we're very, as I said before, we're very busy, we're very distracted. So anything that can take away from that and anchor us and give us a handhold for when we come back to the keyboard, it should be a welcome thing. So I feel like we could get your word budget up, your word yield up much higher, Michael. If we were to put those things in, not that you have a practical reason to do so now, because you said yourself you're not a novelist yet. But I think I can see a little gleam in your eye, that maybe you might want to be at some point,
Thanks. If I had a story that I thought required that, it would be something that I would go after. I don't have that idea even a concept that could become that idea. For now, I've got this collection of short stories that I'm going to write over the next couple of years, and I'm really interested in that. I've done a massive amount of research and have fleshed out the characters and their motivations and factions and things like that. And I'm about halfway through the first story. So that, to me, again, it'll be my longest fictional piece that I've written to date when I do release it. And I'm liking that process. I would love to be able to do it faster. But again, balancing all the different stuff that I do, I love making video, and I like doing journalism, and I like doing the national park stuff that I do. So knowing, the goals that I have for that material, and also making sure that inside of kind of the momentum that I have as an author, putting out books, putting out a paperback every year, that's something, I kind of take some pride in, even if some of them are more personal than others. It's something that I enjoy doing. I like the process of writing it and doing the layout and promoting it and, seeing it in print. That's cool to me. I have added on the short story fiction work to that already existing set of processes and timelines, and I'm beginning to enjoy it more and more as I'm building up, hopefully, a little bit of chops with it. The one I'll release next month will be the third original kind of short story fiction piece that I'll have put out. And I think I'm starting to get somewhere with it, hopefully. But I like doing the writing. I like doing the layout. I like doing the audiobook reading. I don't like doing the editing, but I like doing the production. I know editing is kind of part of the production, but at the same time, that first round of editing is my least favorite, typically, just because you're going back through and having to cut out all of the extra takes that you did. Mostly I just don't like eliminating the ones that didn't work or the flubs and things like that. I don't mind arranging them or even chopping them up so that you kind of dial into the emotional subtext of what's occurring in the line. That I like. And then also with the fictional material, I do just a straight narration read, and then I do an audio drama production with like sound effects and music. And I really like that. I find that to be pleasurable, to hear it kind of emerge out of nothingness into a soundscape with sound effects and environmental components that, to me, make the story more lively. And hopefully for listeners, it does too. That's part of the process of, like, it's not necessarily the writing process, but it's still part of the creative process. My background originally, the first creative things that I did were music, and it's audio, and being able to continue to utilize those skills or those practices, and sometimes writing music for this stuff, I like it, and I want to continue doing it. And also to be able to offer it up for people to participate in and experience. That's cool to me too. I like putting out the video stuff that I do on YouTube and the documentary work that I've done. I like all of those things, and I don't necessarily know if I'm going to like get rid of any one. I kind of gravitate towards things over time. For a long time I did music. I did photography for a great number of years, with some publications, and now my own. And then starting to kind of dip into film and movie a little bit brings all of those things together in a way that is really dynamic and multivariate. I like doing all that stuff. So, if you're sticking with me because you only like one thing, I'm sorry, you're going to get all this different mix of outputs over time. But I guess I would wrap that up by saying, you're also going to get the thing that you hopefully enjoy from me as a creative over time.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have a lot of talent and it's spread over different mediums. I don't really have that kind of versatility, but I was all over the place. Like 20 years ago, I was involved with someone, her name is Bunny Stick. She's on X somewhere. She's into pixel art. Her and I made a spoken word record of my poetry. But she was on the technical end of all that because I don't know much of anything when it comes to production, sound production, and all that. And we were working with a shoestring budget, but it's called Machinations of the Cybernetic Phantom God. It's on this website called Spreaker.com right now. Unfortunately, that's where it ended up. I have other ideas for spoken word projects, but it's like poetry comes and goes. Like we were talking about, like what you dig, what you don't dig. Like I like chapters, man. Like throwing down chapters is like, it's like riding a dragon into outer space or something. Like it's the greatest thing. I don't care for editing. I'll do it. I do it to get it to a first draft, but it's not my favorite thing. I would really love to get back to throwing down audio and making spoken word. I have a couple projects to that end, but who has the time, right?
Yeah, you have to kind of budget yourself. I have one quick last question for you, then I'm going to go to LA. Do you still have all of those files for the spoken word material that you did?
Oh, I do, but they're of dubious sound quality, my friend. If you listen to them, they were made on a microphone we got from a thrift shop.
Love it.
And this was back in like 2003, 2004 with that type of Fruity Loop technology and all that. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's art, like as far as creatively and artistically, it's a beautiful piece. It has like a great vision. Like I have people who still play it for people, like when they come over. And most spoken word records can't boast that. A lot of them are like a little clunky, but yeah, no, their files are around somewhere.
You might find new life for it. LA, welcome to the stage. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you for holding a space like this. I'm one of those frustrated, easily distracted writers I have a dusty stage play on the shelf and 2 short stories, but I do write daily to keep my mental quill sharp, on writing tags. But I was going to throw in that editing is a bitch. Let's put it that way. I mean, editing is horrible. My mother, my late mother, was an English professor, and she had a hint, though, on how to edit your work more quickly. And that is to read your work, however long it is, paragraph by paragraph, starting from the back to the front, because your brain is less likely to ignore the missed words that you forgot to put in, or the doubles that you put in. And so reading it back to front, paragraph by paragraph, was a way to slow down your brain's kind of omission effect, because your brain wants to throw those words in. It thinks it's there, but it's not on the page. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, fair addition to the conversation. And that is why I have now started to do the audiobook reading before I release the ebook or the paperback, because at the beginning of this year, I went back and looked at all of my releases, and found X number of mistakes and wanted to clean those up. So I updated all of the files to clean them up. That stuff, it does slip through, you know what I mean? Like I'm not perfect. And also sometimes the way that you want to say something evolves, and these are our works. I think that it's perfectly fine to to make some slight changes if you want.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't say like revise the whole thing, but if you have some line edits you want to go through and make changes to, or you just find errors in there or punctuation or whatever, I think that's fair. That's reasonable. I'm reading a book right now, physical read, and it really would have benefited from a couple additional eyes. I feel like going through and giving it some editorial feedback, because there's just so many mistakes. The story is really good and engaging. You want to keep reading it. I pounded through like 100 pages of it in a day at the beach last weekend. Not that it's a huge book or anything like that. It's just easy fiction read in that way. But when there are, I think, so consistently occurring mistakes in the text, it's not that I fault the person or anything, because I get it. Like, we're all indie writers and publishers and stuff like that. The stuff slips through. But at the same time, like, if it's been out there for a while and you've got a little bit of time, I would say go back and clean this stuff up, or just give it another set of eyes. That's why I like beta readers. So the short story I'm releasing in the next couple of weeks here have a collection of beta readers, mostly the folks that are in the AI group, because they have watched that story evolve from just a handful of pictures to, the word count that it is now. And I feel like they are most familiar with it. So it's been a help for them to see what I've missed, kind of bringing down from screen to page in that sense, but also to get, their feedback and their view on things as well, just in terms of storytelling or the potential storytelling that could occur within that world if I chose to kind of expand on it. So, I would take advantage of all those things. For anybody that's hanging out, if you want to come up to stage and chat, we'll hang out for a little while longer. And if there are things you want to promote, you can come up and put them in the nest, or if you have questions or comments, you can drop them in the pill and we'll get to them.
I see Maruk is sitting there as listener, and she's a deep friend of mine, and she's published poets.
How much? Anybody with a mic, like, what's your average word yield a day? Like, how much do you write every day? Mine is like, could be 500, 1,000, but most days it's 2K. But we're not talking. It's not a race, but in the same token, Michael was alluding to before, like, to maximize efficiency and to work with what time you have. Perhaps it would be anything that could get you to drop more words. That might be cool. So, Michael, how much do you write in a day in LA? I know I don't know you really, but I just want to take a little poll here.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say on Sundays, when I'm focusing on that, if I'm working through a couple different manuscripts, what I'll find is that I'm able to do anywhere between, say 200 and 1,000 words. On average, on one of those days, I'll do maybe 500 to 600 words. And that might be across a collection of manuscripts that I'm working on, trying to cycle through that stuff and get ideas out, or kind of flesh out scenes or paragraphs or whatever it is that I'm trying to work on at that point in time. But in terms of like through the week, that really varies. I would say, like, so over the last, let's say the Pied Piper thing again, like that is, I think, about 800 to 900 words. So that is written over the course of, what did I release the first one? Not quite a week ago. So I wrote that a couple of days before it was released. So that let's say I was writing 100 words a day for that, but not really. I've been revising as I've gone along, but if you were to spread out the release of that, yeah.
That's cool. Very cool. A good yield. to be definitely to inspire us. LA, I don't know. How about you?
My status right now is I am not actively working on my play, which and my horror fiction short stories. But
Well,
what I do
anyway,
every day, what I do every day, what I
not
do every
everybody
day.
is looking for speed, and not everybody needs to look for speed.
I
But
know.
we're all looking to get our work out there and honor the muse.
But
So
what I do,
I just think the more you can throw down, the better off it is, right?
I throw down every day. I pick 3-word writing prompts every day, horror fiction and 2 others. And I throw out every day, I would say, between them all, and multiple tweets on the horror fiction, multiple tweets on word of the day, VSS 365. But I know I'm putting out, at least 500 or 600, you know, words, each day. And these are words that are just random. They pop up in the morning, and I have to I have to create a story on them, which I think really keeps my mind sharp.
Yeah, I think we lost Ricky for a second. He's back. His connection was messing up. That's my guess. Yeah. So this is perhaps controversial. I don't think it is, but perhaps it is. I think writing social media material counts. In fact, like 3 of my books were written first as social media posts. So like my first draft of the Chicago 1893 book was done as a long form thread. So I would post a picture and write a blurb. I did that every day for 125 days. What's the word count on that? I don't know. What's the max character count is probably a better way to measure it, because it was tweets. On the other side of things, with the Exploring Our National Parks material, those were Instagram posts where I was sharing the photos and writing about that collection of photos or that one image or whatever. And then I go back and I gather that stuff up and put it together. And then I start to really kind of break it down again and say like, okay, what makes sense? Where did I kind of repeat myself? Where did I make a statement better, or can these things be put together? So as somebody who's taken advantage of social media for a very long time, I do think that it can be a great drafting tool. And if it is something that keeps you honest and productive, take advantage of it.
Michael,
yeah.
I have a question. When you said 1898 and Chicago, I immediately think mafioso or mob or
this predates
gang.
all that. Yeah, this
gangs.
is way before
predates
that.
The gangs.
Yeah,
predates the gangs. Okay, because I thought they might have been growing before Prohibition.
Well, I mean, the underworld exists wherever there is a market not being served by the overworld, I suppose you might say.
Okay. That's intriguing.
Yeah,
okay.
That's not to say that it's 1920s, 1930s Chicago. It didn't kind of bubble up over because of Prohibition, but that's graft and all the rest of those things, and political will and stuff that exists regardless. But yeah, the Columbian Exposition was an 1893 world renowned World's Fair event that kind of put Chicago back on the map in the decades following the Chicago fire.
All right.
And I got a book and a documentary. They're both up on Amazon. If it's something that you're interested in,
all right,
you could watch it. Yeah,
I'll look for it.
It's linked off my profile. You can find that stuff if you like. Ricky, we lost you, but you're back.
Yeah, it was good old Elon again, but it's all good. I think social media. I mean, I wrote a couple sections of a poetry book using social media. Sometimes the comment would be a prompt for a whole poem. Other times I would integrate the posts into the poetry. I have a type of poetry that I was writing, I don't anymore, called etherealist poetry. And etherealism is that's a word. I don't know. I haven't really seen it anywhere, but it's the way there's materialism, there should be etherealism. Materialism turns trees into lumber. Etherealism reminds us that they have a spirit and they're alive. So, as an equilibrium to the materialist front, because otherwise, men are just soldiers, which are just meat. Trees are just lumber, water, rivers are just water, everything gets reduced into. I'm not against production. I'm not against that sort of thing, but I think etherealism is important. So I wrote a whole bunch of that type of poetry for the purposes of espousing that in sort of a Gibronian ode, like the way that he would preach, But yeah, I don't know. I post, but I'm not very good at posting. I don't like social media. It kind of horrifies me, to be honest. So, but I don't think it's a controversy, as they say, for anyone to claim that as a word yield. I mean, if you're writing, right?
What you just said reminds me of, I have a recurring theme I write in my again, it's on writing prompts, but it's about the wild woods, and the fae live in the wild woods. And what you just said there about the lumber, a tree is either a piece of lumber or it is a spirit, and the fae have all of their spirits invested in the trees in the wildwood. And when lumber people come in, the fae take action, and the lumbermen are captured into the trees, and the trees take on the knots, take on the faces of the lumbermen. But it just reminded me, etherealism versus materialism. That reminded me of a recurring theme I write about.
Excellent. Great minds think alike, I see.
Maruk, welcome to stage. We're hanging out. You're free to kick in any thoughts or anything that you like.
Hello, Maruk, sweetie, love of my life.
Hey, everyone. Hey, I'm really glad to join in here and join this discussion. It's been a long time. I've been away from Twitter and writing in general. The so sort of being in a hibernation state, you can say that when you don't feel like writing anymore, when you don't want to write anything, you just want to be quiet for some time and just listen to various, um, as word would say, music of life. So, I mean, sometimes it's more important just to listen rather than say something. I've been sharing my poetry quite regularly, and I published my poetry book, my first book, based on it's actually my first book is based on poetry about nature and how I find a connection with various elements of nature, and I feel there is life in them, and I can sort of communicate with them. And like, I'm the kind of person who might look very, I mean, I find it difficult to communicate with people around me, but I find comfort in communicating with various elements of nature. And there is a relationship between us. That's how I feel. And I do converse at times with trees and the scars and the marks on the trees, wondering what made those marks on those branches, and how did they come. I mean, I like to think about those things, and I think at times I think I'm quite dumb, that who would spend so much time thinking about those various things.
Perfectly reasonable. And I would say it is critical to live our lives. That's how we find things to write about or to sing about or to photograph. You have to get out into the world and latch on to interesting occurrences or engagements that are out there. We learn about people, we learn about the environment, we absorb our experiences and internalize them. And, as artists or creatives, they come out in the work that we make, whether that is music. For me, when I was a musician and creating original work, it was always autobiographical. Even when I thought it wasn't, over time you discover that it always is. Writing, again, a very personal thing for me. The stuff I do is, the first book I put out was Chicago oriented. I have grown up and lived around there most of my life. The national park stuff, probably the most personal of the work that I've put out. Not only because they're about my experiences in those places, but they're my experiences with my thinking about those places and most distinctly, me as an individual, over time, or traveling, or just trying to offer additional consideration on themes and locations and experiences. So I usually go an hour before, I don't want to cut everybody off. And Ellie, I know you're going to speak here. So let's say, we'll go a couple more minutes. If there's other things people want to add into the conversation or make sure that people know about, take this time.
I just want to say about Maruk is that Maruk is an amazing one, a champion, Wonder Woman. And she has challenged and overcome so much. And when she mentioned about trees having scars, and that made me think again, we are all basically scarred and flawed. And we got those scars and flaws, or whatever we got. We got them honestly. We got them it we got them dishonestly because someone put them on us, but we're all marked, but we're all going to learn from it. I mean, we're all writing about it and making it a better place.
I don't think Maruk is dumb. I think is that what she said? For having a relationship with trees, I find that to be the farthest thing from the truth. To me, it's a mark of intelligence, someone relating to nature and the study thereof. As a land surveyor, walking around the countryside measuring it, you have quite a relationship with trees and plants. You got to know what's what so you don't get poison ivy. But I do that with rainstorms. I sit out on my porch and I listen to the rain, and just the beauty of the white noise. It's like music, and it puts you in such a wonderful state of mind. It's like looking into a fire. Same thing, hearing the crackle and the pop, but also just the dancing of the flames. I'm not even like a pyromaniac. I just like the experience. I think it's brought up in our evolution. We should be relating to things like that. We need trees to build homes and shelter, and trees need us to rot and to feed off of underneath them and to help them grow. It's a big symbiosis. We're just disconnected by whatever's going on with the cubic society that we've built. But, nature is inexhaustible for inspiration and for correcting your state of mind. So far from it, you're not dumb at all. You're probably more intelligent than the average person,
And I'm a fire witch, and I absolutely love flame in every form. And Maruk knows this, and she doesn't hold it against me.
Yeah, no, dig it. Yeah. That's cool. I met some green witches back in the day who were all about plants and things like that. So I can dig it.
Well, hey, we've been going. Do this space every 2 weeks. So we'll be back the second week of August. as the crow flies. This recording will be up on my podcast platform the Monday before that event. There are a slew of great writing spaces here on Twitter. Ricky hosts pretty regularly, at least every Thursday, sometimes more. Gonzalo is below. He does a workshop on Tuesday evenings, and then, intermittently at random, he'll do additional reading spaces and things like that. His space is going to be on hiatus for this week and next week, I think. And then after that, it will be back, I believe. Don't hold him to my lack of familiarity with his schedule, but it is typically Tuesday evenings, and it's a great place to workshop your ideas. If you have existing editorial, great place to put it through its paces. If you have almost nothing and merely kernels, as I do most times when I go in there, also a great place to get some additional brickwork done on the foundation and give it something to stand on in that way. So I would say take advantage of all of those spaces. I am co-hosting with Heidi on Tuesdays, midday, the writer's block as well. So we do that every week. I do this one every 2 weeks, but throughout the week, throughout the month, there are a slew of these spaces, and you should definitely take advantage of them if it's an issue of wanting to workshop your stuff or talk shop or get additional perspective or just see who else is out there or learn about projects that are emerging or are released. The circuit is there to discover and to lean into at your will. For today, I appreciate you coming and hanging out. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Hey, no problem. I appreciate you coming up and chatting with us. Like I said, we'll be back at it in 2 weeks. And up above, there's a collection of tweets in the nest. If you want to check some things out before I close up shop, I would say open those tweets so you can watch videos or listen to recordings or anything else. Ricky, what do you got?
Very quickly, like Michael said, tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern time, it should be myself, Tom, and MJ Hunsgood. We're going to be designing the last 10K of my latest fantasy novel, cosmic fantasy novel, Wargate. So anybody, more the merrier. Please come and join us. And thank you, Michael, very much for hosting this space.
So wait, are you moving that from Thursday to Wednesday this week?
No, tomorrow's Thursday, isn't it?
God, oh my word. Yes, you're right. It is.
Yeah,
no.
It is Thursday.
No, welcome to Wednesday. I've been doing this on Wednesdays for almost a year at this point, and I don't even know what day it is. I appreciate it.
No, it's all good. The only reason why I know it's Wednesday is because that's Woden's Day and it's laundry day for me. So
yeah, fair. I was just talking about writer's block and Gonzalo's spaces, which are on Tuesdays, and I got my brain all twisted up. Yeah, I appreciate you straightening it out. At any rate, enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk before too long.